Call me daddy every time we fuck, but you can't be my baby, yeah. You fucking around with lady, yeah. I know that this can't be love. In a prison.
The silence in the grand mansion was deafening, even though every corner was beautifully adorned with lavish furniture and crystal chandeliers. The cold marble floors beneath her feet mirrored the coldness that had crept into her heart ever since the marriage. YN stood by the window, her fingers clutching the sheer curtains, staring out at the garden she hadn't had the energy to tend to for weeks. The vibrant roses had wilted, their once blossoming beauty now a distant memory. Just like her dream of becoming a mother. It had been weeks since the miscarriage, and her husband, Jimin, had been as distant as ever. Their arranged marriage was a union of convenience, business merging with business, families sealing contracts with their lives. And Jimin, with his icy demeanor and sharp tongue, had never shown any signs of warmth. Not until the door creaked open, and she heard the familiar sound of his measured footsteps. She didn't turn around. She couldn't.
YN.
Jimin's voice was soft but still held the same formality. He stopped a few feet away from her. She exhaled sharply, not wanting to have this conversation.
What is it, Jimin?
Her voice was barely above a whisper. He hesitated, a rare occurrence. Jimin, the confident, unfeeling man, hesitating. It made her turn around.
What?
She snapped, her emotions frayed from the pain.
What could you possibly have to say?
He took a deep breath, his hands clenched by his side.
I'm sorry.
YN blinked.
Sorry? For what? For never being there? For treating this marriage like a transaction? For leaving me alone through everything?
Her words were filled with pain, the dam of her feelings bursting after weeks of silence. She saw the flicker of something in his eyes, but she didn't care. He had to hear this.
I was carrying our child, Jimin.
Her voice broke.
And when I lost it, I lost a part of myself. But you didn't even care.
He stepped forward, his face softening in a way she had never seen before.
YN,
No!
She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes.
Don't pretend like you cared. You've never cared. This marriage was never about love. It was about business, wasn't it?
Jimin's jaw tightened, his gaze dropping to the floor.
It was at first.
Her heart clenched painfully.
At first?
I didn't know how to care for you.
He confessed, his voice low.
I didn't know how to be a husband. I was raised in a world where emotions were a weakness, where success and power were all that mattered.
And that's what I've been to you? A weakness?
Her voice trembled.
No, YN.
He took another step closer, and this time she didn't move away.
You've never been a weakness. You've been everything.
His words hung in the air, and for the first time, YN saw in his eyes. The cracks in the ice.
Why didn't you tell me?
She whispered, the anger slowly being replaced by confusion.
Why didn't you show me any of this before?
Jimin swallowed hard, running a hand through his hair.
Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I let you in, if I let myself feel anything for you, I'd lose control.
Control?
YN let out a bitter laugh.
Control over what?
Myself, my life, you.
He admitted, his voice breaking slightly.
I thought if I stayed distant, if I kept everything about this marriage business like, I wouldn't get hurt. But I didn't realize that in doing so, I was hurting you.
YN stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the first time he had ever spoken to her like this, like she mattered.
When I saw you in the hospital,
Jimin continued, his voice barely above a whisper now.
After the miscarriage, something inside me broke. I realized I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep living this lie. I do care, YN. I care more than I know how to show.
Tears welled up in Yen's eyes, her breath catching in her throat. She had dreamed of hearing those words, but now that they were here, she didn't know how to respond.
Why now?
She asked, her voice cracking.
Why are you telling me this now?
Jimin looked at her with a awe she had never seen before.
Because I thought I had more time. I thought I could fix things slowly, but when we lost the baby, I realized how fragile everything is. I don't want to lose you too.
Yen's heart squeezed painfully. She had been drowning in her grief, thinking she was alone. But now, hearing this, it was like a lifeline was being thrown to her. Could she trust him? Could she believe this change?
I don't know if I can forgive you, Jimin.
She whispered, her voice breaking.
Not yet.
I don't expect you to.
He said softly, stepping closer until they were just inches apart.
But I want to try. I want to be the man you deserve. I want to be a better husband for you. And when the time is right, if it's what you want, a better father.
Yen looked up at him, her vision blurred by tears. His words touched a place deep inside her that had long been neglected, but there was still a lingering hesitation.
And what if I can't believe you?
She asked, her voice fragile. Jimin gently reached for her hand, his soft, unlike anything she had ever felt from him.
Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you.
For the first time in weeks, Yen let herself cry, but this time it wasn't out of despair. It was a release. Jimin pulled her into his arms, and she didn't resist. The walls that had stood between them for so long had started to crumble, piece by piece. Later that night, as they lay in bed, Yen stared at the ceiling, still processing the events of the day. Jimin, beside her, had turned away, leaving a respectful distance between them. His presence, usually cold and distant, now felt different. Softer, like he was trying to give her space but also stay close enough to show he was there if she needed him.
Jimin?
She whispered into the dark, her voice barely audible. She asked, her voice fragile.
Yes?
Yen hesitated, chewing on her lip. She wasn't sure what she wanted to say, but the silence between them had always been suffocating. For once, she wanted to fill it with something other than resentment.
I don't know how to move forward.
She admitted softly.
After everything, after the baby, us.
His presence, usually cold and distant, now felt different. Softer, like he was trying to give her space but also stay close enough to show he was there if she needed him.
I don't either.
He admitted.
But I know that I want to try, for you, for us.
His words hung in the air between them, and Yen felt a lump in her throat.
I've always felt like I didn't matter to you.
She confessed, her voice shaking slightly.
That I was just here to fill a role, a name to go along with yours.
Jimin's face twisted in pain at her words.
I know.
He said quietly.
I didn't realize how much I had hurt you, how much I had distanced myself, but Yen, you matter to me. You've always mattered. I didn't know how to show it.
Yen turned her head to look at him, her tears glistening in the low light of the room.
You really mean that?
I do.
He said earnestly, reaching out to take her hand.
I was afraid of you, of this marriage, of everything, but I don't want to be afraid anymore. I want to be with you, really with you.
His hand tightened around hers, and she could feel the sincerity in his grip.
We can take it slow.
Jimin added, his voice softer.
I'll give you all the time you need, but I want to be better for you, Yen. I want to be the husband you deserve.
Yen felt her heart ache, torn between the lingering pain of the past and the tentative hope of the future. She had been so alone, so broken. But maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to heal. Together.
I need time.
She whispered, her voice trembling.
I don't know if I can just forget everything.
I don't expect you to.
Jimin replied gently, his thumb brushing over the back of her hand.
We've both been through a lot, but I'm here, YN. I'm not going anywhere.
For the first time in their marriage, YN believed him.